Coming up, from Instagram to a nationwide movement, the culture changers are revolutionizing how churches address modern challenges. And a star quarterback stays grounded by faith. Welcome to the 700 Club Canada. I hope you're having an absolutely amazing day. Well, I don't know if you've noticed, but culture is changing quickly, and sometimes it feels like your breath is being taken away. I get it. But we as the church must respond. So how does the church change? How can it change? How should it change? This is a question we want to address today as we get to explore with some special guests. So from Instagram to a nationwide movement, the culture changers are revolutionizing how churches address modern challenges. And so welcome to the set, founders Jason and Carrie Persaud, here to discuss how the need for the ministry has emerged. Welcome. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thanks, Bill. We're so excited to be
Thank
here.
you. Yeah, it's great to be here with you.
Yeah, so Carrie, Culture Changers started kind of as an Instagram movement, but now has become really a form of empowering churches to address changes that we see all around in culture, and it's changing so quickly. So how did that happen?
Yeah, well, I mean, Bill, fall of 2020, for those of you who may not remember, our culture was in a bit of upheaval. You know, the pandemic was happening, and then there was a lot going on in the world related to social justice. We had the death of George Floyd. Many of our young people were taking to the streets in protests, and the church, for the most part, was silent. And so what we were finding is the youth and young adult from our church, they were going to Instagram, other social media platforms to get their information. You know, our young people are 3 times more likely to go to social media rather than broadcast news to get their information. And at the same time, you know, only 1 in 3 Christian Canadian youth are actually reading their Bible weekly. And so how are they able to process all of perhaps the misinformation they're hearing on social media and process it in a biblical context? And so we began hosting these conversations on Instagram Lives, just about what was happening in culture, just as a way to speak into it. Felt that we needed to be where our young people were. But that has evolved because we are passionate about the local church. We both have served in local churches on staff, and we believe that the local church is God's vehicle on the earth today. And so we just really felt like we needed to move the conversation from social media into the local church context, believing that youth, young adults, if they had trusted godly leaders in their life, that they could have these conversations with. And so now we've evolved to be more of how can we equip church leaders and pastors to be able to have their own conversations with their young people to be able to move that into the local church setting.
Yeah, I love that, because I think many, maybe even some viewers, kind of see culture as bad or negative, and maybe technology. But the truth is, these are all just mechanisms and methods. And if we can leverage them for the kingdom, and like you said, it's the platform or the language that the next generation is already speaking and leaning into, how can we do that better? And so, okay, so you talk about tough topics.
We do.
So what are some of the toughest topics you've actually had to address?
Well, Bill, you know, back in 2020, we had to address racial justice.
Right.
And just dealing with that, how can we help young people specifically, but the church as well, know how to tackle this really from a biblical perspective? You know, we saw many young people, especially in larger urban centers across our country, see things happening in other places like the US, what was happening, but their fuel wasn't righteous fuel. It was fueled in other things. And so seeing students follow secular media or organizations, secular influencers, we really felt that we needed to provide some context from a Jesus perspective.
Right.
How would Jesus engage these conversations and help engage to understand why it's important and why we need to do that?
Yeah, well, the verse I think of immediately is, do not be overcome by evil, but overcome evil with good.
Yeah.
And I think the temptation and the tendency, right, is to fight evil with evil, to retaliate, to get my rights. And so I love that. Can you maybe give a couple of examples of how Culture Changers is actually impacting the church or equipping to address maybe some of the social media or social justice issues?
Yeah. You know, one of the things that we have expanded to is we started with racial justice. Okay. And now with things happening in culture, even war, students, young people, the church want to know, how do we respond to war, genocide, and all these things? What would Jesus say if he was here about that? And I think we have a good biblical perspective on how Jesus engaged culture. And so stepping into the arena, not just with that, but even sexuality and different cultural things that young people are in chaos about. We really feel like we need to provide a base biblically, not just this cultural Christianity. There's this things that is so pervasive, persuasive in the church on cultural Christianity. What about biblical Christianity? How do we form a good foundation for young people to attack these topics? And even more important, I think, to create conversation space for students to begin to process this. And not just students, but I even think leaders as well. I've had so many conversations, Bill, with pastors and ministry leaders across the country. And so that's opened up a space for us to speak at conferences, to work with staff teams, to do a number of different types of things, even Sunday mornings. Bill, I'll never forget, one of the first opportunities I had was on a Sunday morning in 2021 to speak on racial justice in a church. Now, things were still very sensitive and very touchy, but I had a friend in ministry and said, I think this is good, for our church to understand, and a great way for you to begin to process helping churches do this. And so we're grateful for the opportunities that we've received from different ministries and organizations to be able to do that.
I love that. And just really quickly, I want to lean into something here because I think it's important. You talk about conversation.
Yeah.
And I think that's really important because I think we're used to one way, from a position of I'm right, you're wrong. How can our viewers, just really quickly, maybe start having these conversations on their own with maybe their children, their grandchildren?
Yeah.
Yeah, I know for me, when it comes to the topic of, racial injustice, as someone who's Caucasian, has lived in Canada all my life, it was really important for me during that season to assume the position of a learner and a listener, and just to hear other people's stories. And so, finding people in my church, neighbors that I could just listen to and hear their stories to understand. And sometimes it was hard because they said things that perhaps I didn't want to hear, because I felt like I was being lumped.
Yes.
Right? In a certain group, but I needed to humble myself. And so I think for those of us who are more mature, we need to assume a posture of humility. And just open our ears and our hearts, and then allow the young people that we're in conversation with to express what they're thinking, even though everything inside of me screams, that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. I've learned that I have to just close my mouth, and I just sometimes have to allow them to process. And then after they've spoken, then, I can interject, but I need to do it from a position of, I hear you. I may not agree with what you're saying, but I hear you and I'm trying to understand. And so those are some of the things that I know that I had to do.
I love that. Well, we're going to hear more in just a few moments. We'll be right back.
What do I enjoy most about what I do? Well, that's easy. I love connecting with people, especially when someone says, I am so glad I can talk with you. I really need prayer. That's God's perfect timing. I talk with people all the time who want prayer for a family situation. Sometimes it's prayer for an emotional or physical need, or even a financial breakthrough. It's so amazing that I can share about God's love and encourage people. I love this Bible verse, for it is God who works in you to will and to act in order to fulfill his good purpose. God is at work. I've seen him answer prayer. Won't you call today? 1-855-759-0700. God bless you.
Well, we are back with Jason and Carrie Prasad, culture changers. And I want to pick up where we left off because there's something really important about what you said, Carrie, about learning and how we can learn. Because I think we forget that when we were young, we had to deconstruct our own worldview too, and we needed safe places. And I don't know if social media is that safe, right?
Yeah.
So how are you helping maybe pastors or those who are older? How are you equipping them to navigate that?
Yeah, Bill, there's a couple different things that we're doing in our ministry to do that. I really think research is a great place to start. to help us form a case. And in that sense, World Vision did a study that they released last year, and they shared the top 5 things that are on young people's hearts. It's interesting. Mental health was number 1.
Yes.
Climate change was number 2. Racial justice was number 3. And then poverty. And I can't remember the 5th at the moment. And so understanding that. But what was interesting in that research was that 47% of young people globally said that they want a religious leader or a Christian leader to lead in that conversation. So I think, hearing and understanding the questions and the need and the burdens that young people specifically and people in the world that are caring, we've got to be able to address that. So I think that's a good place to start. And then from a biblical foundation, I think we need to understand that justice is very dear to God's heart.
100%.
We look from all the way to Genesis, all the way to Revelation, and there is this thread and this connection of, loving your neighbor as yourself, doing right to others. And there's so many different scriptures that talk about speaking up for those that are oppressed, for those that are downtrodden, and rescuing them. And we have a responsibility to do that. And so I think steering people to God's heart is really the first place.
I love that because I think, and you tell me if I'm right on this or if I'm on the right track. I just think every human being needs a cause, a reason to get up in the morning. And the challenge is sometimes the church hasn't given a compelling cause, even though we have the most compelling cause. And so they're giving their time and their attention and their energy to causes that we know maybe aren't as beneficial to them as individuals or to society as a whole. So how can we as the church do a better job, if we're going to change culture, by building a cause that's worthy of giving our life for?
Yeah. If I can just talk about Jesus for just one moment.
I'd love that.
Because I think he has to be the center of everything. In Matthew chapter 15 and Mark chapter 7, there's this story of this Syrophoenician woman that Jesus called a dog. And it's an interesting story because in the first 20 verses of Matthew 15, Jesus is talking about inner purity. The religious leaders come to him and they question him why his disciples aren't washing their hands. And in essence, Jesus says, it's not what goes into a man that makes him unclean, it's what comes out of a man. And then he takes his young disciples on like this 50-kilometer journey north from where they were in Galilee to Tyre and Sidon. And he teaches them. He has this encounter with this woman where he ignores her. He says, that he's only come for the children of Israel. And, and this incredible dialogue that I don't have time to get into. But he teaches this lesson that he was crossing racial, gender, cultural, ethnic, and religious barriers all in one story. And I think we have to look at Jesus and how he lived his life and how he demonstrated what it meant or means to love people and to get out of a place of comfort and cross some areas that are a little messy. I think Jesus did a good job on that.
Yeah, and he did remind us that it might even cost us our life.
Absolutely.
But it's worth it. And I think this generation is looking for something worthy of their life. I think that's where hopelessness comes, right? When you don't feel that way. Okay, so you recently started a new project called Urban Leadership Network. So can you just really briefly tell me a little bit about that?
Yes, I mean, as we've been going into churches, talking with pastors and ministry leaders and working with, staff teams, we're seeing coming out of the pandemic that a lot of these teams feel disconnected, perhaps under-resourced, overwhelmed, especially in our large urban centers. We have a lot of smaller churches. Many of them may be like an ethnic church focused around a certain language group or a certain cultural group. And so how do we help connect together? And so it's not a denomination, it's not a credentialing organization. It really is just designed to, okay, you're doing something that's great. How do we partner together to see God's kingdom move forward, especially in urban centers? And so we've set up different hubs where on different topics, leaders can gather and interact, share information, best practices, and really just connect relationally. That's really what it's about.
Yeah.
Well, what I love most about that is I just think, actually, if you want to change culture, you got to do it through community.
Yeah.
No one individual can do it, and so we have to do it together. So really, just have a few moments left together.
Yeah.
One thing you want our viewers to walk away from this interview knowing or thinking or feeling?
Yeah, I think more than anything, how can we continue to model Jesus in our world? And how can we engage in conversations that maybe our perspectives aren't, in agreement with them, but still love people where they're at and just love people and bring them into the kingdom?
And, you know, I'm reminded of Jesus' words where he said to his disciples, upon this rock, I'll build my church and the gates of hell will not prevail against it. And so even though there may be chaos in our culture, God still has a plan. Jesus is still the hope of the world, and the local church is his vehicle on the earth. And we will make it.
I love that. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Bill.
I'm encouraged, inspired. There is hope, and
Yes.
hope has a name. His name
Yes.
is Jesus. Well, for
Yes.
more information on the Culture Changers, visit 700club.ca. Well, now this is Tua's story, where faith and family form the foundation of his journey both on and off the football field. Watch this.
Tua Tagovailoa's sudden rise to prominence was stunning when the Samoan-born, Hawaiian-raised freshman backup stepped up with a 2018 overtime game-winning championship throw that threw him to the forefront of college football. Since then, Tua, how have you seen your life accelerate?
My life's accelerated in many ways, especially after you come off the bench. You know, no one really knows who you are. How people treat you is totally different. How people view you is totally different. Now you're at a pedestal where every little thing you do now is under a microscope, you know? It's not the same anymore.
When you see this, can you believe this is your history?
Something I've always dreamed of, you know, when I was a kid.
Yeah.
Winning a national championship. Never thought I'd get the opportunity to be on Sports Illustrated.
How are you different, do you think? How have you grown from that freshman season?
A lot more maturity takes place. A lot more ownership for, you know, the quarterback room. A lot more ownership for the team. So a bigger leadership role.
And then it comes with it, there's the chatter, there's the pressure, NFL teams tanking for Tua. How do you compartmentalize that and live your life as a college student?
Well, I think you got to be able to brush a lot of those things to the side, and you got to worry and focus about what's at stake now. The things that I need to do to prepare me for that next level. Footwork, to my eyes, to things I need to do in the film room. If I can take care of the little things with what I'm doing now, I can be that much better. If that professional life does call me, I'll be sure to be ready.
What is it about the Alabama football program that draws the best out of both player and person?
Just the standard that we have set here, how Coach Saban goes about doing things. You know, everyone thinks Coach Saban is this guy where, well, you guys got to fear him because he's going to yell at you. But, you know, Coach Saban only does that because he expects the best, and he understands that you're more capable than what you do, and this is how I got to correct you, you know, so you don't do it again. So it's just being held to a standard here.
What does the Alabama Southern Life uniquely offer a lifelong Hawaiian resident?
Well, there's many similarities and there's many differences. Now, when you go to Birmingham, it's almost like the city, and then you go elsewhere, you got that country life. And in Hawaii, the North Shore is kind of the country life, and then you go to Waikiki, that's the city life. I'd say a lot of people out here are very true to what they believe. Football here is big, and out there in Hawaii is pretty big too, so not too much of a big difference.
Your formal extended first name.
It's Tuaninga Manu Olepola.
And Tua, what does that mean to you?
When I was little, asking my parents what it meant, Tuaninga was this bird. So Manu in Samoan is bird, and Pola in Samoan is mountain. So this bird who circles the mountain is just the protector of it.
What is the Samoan way?
They say fa Samoa. Samoan way is respect. Respect is the biggest thing in our culture. Our dad always told us growing up, people will always remember you from the way you walk, from the way you talk, and from the way you hold yourself. And that doesn't go just for you, but it goes towards representing your family as well.
The Samoan devotion to family is revered. How do you explain that value to teammates, to friends whose family life is broken?
It's a lot harder to explain it to them, only because it just comes natural to us. And so I'd say every time my family's around, just being able to love on each other, those guys being able to look and see, you know, how we treat one another, our brothers, our sisters, our moms, and our dads, you know, being able to treat them with respect.
It's all about giving back and being obedient to the things that, you know, will make you successful in life.
For our family, it's basically faith, family, and football. You know, so everything is based on our faith, grounded and rooted in that.
Vision to see, core to throw from. Does that transfer over into life? Having vision and having the footing to handle?
Oh yeah, it definitely does. Football, when you're a quarterback, your base is the biggest thing. Being able to throw and follow through, having your ground really centered, where the ball's gonna go and how hard it's gonna travel. Your foundation is what you're always gonna revert back to. For me, my foundation is my faith and my family. You know, my faith is what keeps me motivated when I can't even stay motivated myself. I'm just trying to play football, just trying to be able to take care of my family and be able to use my platform for the right reasons.
What do you admire most about Jesus Christ?
The greatest gift that God could have ever given us was his son. It's not just a matter of hearing what Jesus Christ is, it's a matter of getting to know who Jesus Christ is, to really understand and really feel the true identity of who you are because of things that he's done. And I'd say you can only find your identity through him if you know him.
The story with your grandfather goes that he once proclaimed, when you were an infant, that your name would become great, world-renowned, giving recognition to God's honor. When you look back on that 20-some years later, where you're sitting today, how does that resonate with you?
That's only something that God could have done. My grandfather was someone who we'd really go to before games, you know, for prep talks and soft words. Go out there with the heart of David or, you know, just little things like that. And when our grandfather would tell us this, you know, we wouldn't really know what it meant. But, you know, as you grow older, you start to understand the revelation of what he's been saying, and they all fall into just one thing. It's knowing that what we believe in is something much bigger than just us.
In my life, I have learned the importance of having a strong foundation. And so I really connected with this story about a young and talented quarterback who achieved fame, money, and power, and as a result, had to wrestle with what really was most important in his life, his foundation. It would be easy for someone in his position to get derailed by the pressures and temptations that come with success. But Tua's foundation kept him steady in a really shaky culture. I love the analogy he used of a quarterback and how a quarterback needs a strong base to throw from. It's this solid foundation which increases his accuracy on the field. And this analogy really does apply beautifully to life as well. When you build your life on solid values, you're not easily knocked down or thrown off course. And what I've learned is that these values need to be established proactively with God's help so that you don't find yourself reacting in destructive ways when challenges arise, and they will. In Matthew chapter 7, verse 24, Jesus says, "Therefore, everyone who hears these words of mine and puts them into practice is like a wise man who built his house on the rock, a solid foundation." This verse reminds us that hearing and practicing Jesus' teaching creates a strong, unshakable foundation. Just like a quarterback relies on a strong base to perform well in football, we need a solid spiritual and moral foundation to navigate life's ups and downs. And so when we proactively build our lives on biblical principles like integrity, compassion, faith, we are better equipped to handle whatever comes our way. And this preparation ensures that we don't just react to situations, but respond in ways that reflect our true core values and beliefs. So as we go through our daily lives, let's focus on strengthening our foundation in Jesus, on the Bible. Let's commit to living out His teachings by building a house on His rock and ensuring that when the storms of life come, we remain steadfast and unshaken. And if you need prayer for anything regarding this, you need a new foundation today, please do not hesitate to call us at 1-855-759-0700. We'll be right back.
Your will and the next generation. Creating a will can teach the next generation what it means to return to others what has been given to you. A well-crafted will can leave a lasting and meaningful legacy for generations to come. You can give your loved ones more than just money. You can provide them with the opportunity to learn valuable lessons like generosity, family responsibility, good stewardship, and wise tax planning. Advisors with Purpose can take you step by step through the will planning process in order to fulfill your dreams, your wishes, and your legacy. 700 Club Canada has partnered with Advisors with Purpose to offer you this free service. Contact us to get started at plan@advisorswithpurpose.ca.
In our interview today, we explored the idea of using technology or leveraging technology to bring the good news of Jesus to our world. And that's really what we are committed to here at the 700 Club Canada. How can we invest in technology to help people discover who they really are in Jesus? And to do that, we need partners like you. So I want to encourage you to call today and become a 700 Club Canada monthly partner. And when you do that today, you're going to receive this DVD teaching and workbook entitled Biblical Answers to Today's Questions. Take a look at this.
The Bible can answer your questions.
Are science and faith incompatible?
How could a loving God allow so much suffering?
So what are the signs of the end times?
Gordon Robertson and Andrew Knox tackle these tough topics in Biblical Answers to Today's Questions.
When you call to him with your questions, he will answer you.
Let biblical truth guide your thinking on the major issues of our day.
The Word of God has the answers we're looking for.
Gain the empowering insights and practical strategies you need to face life's difficult questions with confidence in this exclusive DVD and workbook.
God wants to give you wisdom.
Gordon Robertson and Andrew Knox reveal ancient truths for the modern world. Call now to get this special DVD combo, Biblical Answers to Today's Questions. Available now.
I just wanted to take a moment to remind you that here at the 700 Club Canada, we deeply care about you. We really do. And maybe we don't know exactly where you're at or what you are going through, but we have provided an opportunity for you to connect to us so that we together connect with God. And the way we do that is through our prayer line. I want to remind you, you can call at any time, 24/7, this number, 1-855-759-0700, and someone is waiting to talk to you and pray with you. You're not alone. We are here with you and for you. Let us pray together and believe for a miracle in your life today. So again, call us at 1-855-759-0700. We're here for you today. And we also love it when you send in your comments. Thank you. Our partners interact with us in many different ways. And so Ashley said, thanks very much for your prayers and good wishes. May God continue to bless you all. I really appreciate your prayers and words of support. And Ashley, we appreciate you too. And Gloria said, thank you for all that you do. I just love the ministry. God bless you all. Well, thank you, Gloria. Thank you for your kind words. And let us keep doing this together. I believe there is hope for Canada, and hope comes when we pray and believe in a God who is great, and we do it together. Well, our power verse today is found in Ephesians chapter 2, verse 10, where it says, "For we are God's handiwork, created in Christ Jesus to do good works, which God prepared in advance for us to do." And so as you leave today, I want to remind you, God created you for some noble purpose on this planet. He created you to make a difference by trusting Him one step at a time. And so I believe there is hope for Canada because we still believe in a God who is great. Thank you so much for watching.
To contact us, visit 700club.ca.
Tomorrow on the 700 Club Canada, Amber's faith journey began with a cry for help and led to a miraculous family reunion.